All right, so now I got to figure out what I'm going to do with this mess here. And what I'm going to do is, now I'm going to use blue tape because I don't want all this stuff getting on my blank. And I'm only going to use this blue tape as a guide because I have to do some cutting. So what I want to do is see what's the farthest I can go before I start having threads that are coming off the blank. Like right here, this thread is sticking up pretty high. I could probably, this one I think is going to be more of a problem. And actually, not to point out my flaws, but if you look on this band right here with this one right here with the light blue inside of the, if you look like right here, the thread starts to come together and not maintain the proper spacing. You can see right there, or it's not. So like if I were to cut this over here, you're gonna see where that's kind of like not, you know, proper as far as what the purpose of the build was. But okay, I'm gonna just temporarily lay this down where I think I can do this. I think I can go like right here, and that should be pretty good. Let me just temporarily just take a look at that. Yeah, I think that would be okay. So now what I want to do is, wherever I'm going to cut this off, I'd like these to be the equal size. So this is approximately about 11 millimeters. So let me see what happens if I go 11 millimeters from the winding check. And that's basically it. So let me see how that looks. That looks like that will work. And I think that will work. Should be about the same. This looks a little bit off over here. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna redo, I should have just done a bigger piece of tape, but what I'm gonna do is I'll lay this tape in right here about where I had that. And then, you know, and I don't know if other builders that do like cross wraps, because when you do cross wraps, you're gonna have that same thing going on with all this masking tape. Like regardless of if it's a WACKY or if it's a other types of cross wraps, you're gonna have that. So I don't know if other builders, you know, how they do it. You know, so, all right. So now that I've got that on there, I'm gonna go a little bit thicker, because what I'm doing now is I'm just trying to create a guide for where I'm gonna use my razor blade and cut this off. And I think that should be good. Okay, so this one, I'm gonna do the same thing. That looks a little bit longer over here. All right, that looks a little bit, that's 11. That's 11, so the measurement's fine. That just ripped on me. So let me get another piece, and that looks good. So I'm gonna get this piece off of here. I'm gonna wind this piece on. I think this should be good. And actually, I think I'll be pretty happy with that, because when I was looking at it, And I was looking at it when it was just on here before I did anything, and I was envisioning how this would go. I was a little bit concerned that I'd have to cut it further back than I wanted, but now that I'm seeing it, I think I'm going to be pretty happy with this result. Okay, so basically what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to cut this right here all the way around. It's just going to be like a dead end. And actually, when I just did the wacky on Pam's gaff, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about the look of just finishing it off and then starting back up with the same color thread. But actually, I was pretty excited about how it came out. I'll tell you what I'm going to do now. Now I'm going to cut some thread kind of narrow. And I'm going to wrap this thread right next and create kind of like a channel as kind of like a guide to keep my cut straight. And you don't have to do this, but this isn't really something that you do a lot, and because it's not something that I do a lot, this should help keep it a little straighter. I do the same thing like this, where I create this little channel, like if I'm cutting grip material, like foam. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get a fresh razor blade because I want this to be as sharp as possible. You go through a lot of razor blades when you're building rods. I definitely recommend buying like a 100-pack. They sell them at Home Depot. And I think I'm going to use my magnifying glass for this because I want to try to keep that as and I'm kind of stressing this right now, to be honest with you, but you know, just like how it's going to come out. But you know, at some point you can only overthink it for so long before you gotta move forward on your build. So that seems to be going pretty smooth. Be careful with these razor blades. They can slip out of your hand. My hand's already like super tired from doing this. You definitely will, probably in the course of your rod building career, at some point you're probably going to cut yourself pretty good with a razor blade. And then usually you kind of learn from there to chill out a little bit and be more careful. All right, so I'm gonna pull that off this side here. Try to get a better look at what's going on here. I think I'm gonna go ahead and keep this piece of tape on this side. Eyes are definitely messing with me. It's like if you're a younger person and or have really good vision and or have way better lighting than this, you probably have a lot less problems than all these problems I'm having in the garage with all my lighting and vision issues. So effectively what I'm doing is I'm cutting through all of the thread and all of the flex coat. And I mean, right here I've got, you know, 15 bands of thread covered by like 20 bands of thread, intersecting here underneath where there's 20 bands of thread. So it's a little bit of a challenge for sure. I'm pushing pretty hard. I'm pulling here and I'm pushing pretty hard to get through all this. My eyes are giving me fits. And basically what I want to do is I just want to make sure I'm really all the way. I'd like to get all the way through and down to where I'm scoring the blank. Just literally completely through everything. And the reason why is because I'm gonna have to pull, I think that's probably good. I'm gonna have to pull all this mess off of here. And I don't want there to be any part where it's trying to hang on and pull. I just want it to just completely come apart from the other side. And now that I'm removing the tape, you can see pretty good where it's scored right here, all the way around. So I think I'm actually gonna come back in with my razor blade. And you could even start over with a fresh razor blade right here. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea. Got a little bit of adhesive from this tape. That's why I definitely didn't want to use white masking tape, because that stuff's super gummy. This stuff's barely gummy at all, and some stuck to the flex coat. I'll end up wiping that down. Oh man. All right, so like I said, I don't have a ton of experience with this, so I'm just gonna try to figure this out as I go. This is a little bit of a bitch. That's coming off pretty good, actually. Look at that, it's a mess. I mean, you could definitely mess this up. There's no question. You can mess it up. I don't want that to happen. There's really no other way to deal with all this though. I mean, if this wasn't so bulky, I could maybe just do some thread over the top and then just cut that off, but this stuff's sticking up and I just don't want this to come apart, so that's why I'm being more careful with it. Let me see if I get that out of my face. I'm not sure if that is as cut as I want it to be, so I'm just gonna go back in and put some more cutting action on that, because I really want to make sure that it is. I'm concerned that I'm gonna mess it up. So let me just go back in here and just push. It's working better, just going kind of like barely through it. I'm getting like a second line here that I didn't mean to get, so Yeah, this is just kind of a bitch. I think my flex coat kind of dried a little bit tacky on this one too. So that adds another potential issue into the mix. That's starting to get out of alignment. All right, I think I just have to go and do this. Like I said, I'm concerned I'm gonna mess it up, but there's only so much you can do. Yeah, it's you can tell where like it's wanting to stop because fibers that are lower weren't cut fully and they're wanting to hold on. So I'm gonna need to have to do some more cutting. You can see what that looks like. So maybe I might even just have to do a little section at a time of really trying to get through this. Yeah, that worked. You know, the worst thing that can happen is you can just mess up your wrap and then you can always redo it if you had to. So, I mean, that was really time consuming and I'd like to just be able to get this done the way I want to get it done in one try. All right, I think I can pull this off this way. Yep. Oh, shit. That's what I didn't want to happen. Gosh darn it. Yeah, that's a little bit of a flub there. I think I can deal with it, but man, that's frustrating. Yeah, so what happened is right here, it like wanted to lift and pull because it just, I'll get some more flex coat on that, and then once the flex coat's on it, I'll end up kind of slicing it flat, but I'm definitely gonna have to slow way down on this and just give this thing a lot more respect than I was giving it because it's definitely being a bitch. Big time. Man, oh man. Okay, that wants to come up pretty good. That's mostly off, so now I just gotta really focus on this section right here and just get that all the way down to the bone, if you will. I think that's good. Yeah, I think that should be good now. Okay. All right, you can see most of that came off now. So that was a little bit of what I would call not going the way I wanted it to go. I don't think it's catastrophic. It's definitely not enough for me to like cut it off, but I could move my line over a little bit more. That just would entail kind of like recutting the whole thing. I'm kind of walking my line over a little bit as we speak here. I think it's going to be okay. As far as like the rough edges and where it's turning white from, you know, being disturbed, like whenever I come back in with my second coat over all that, it should be able to kind of clean that up. Just the natural properties of the way the flex coat works. All right, so, and like I said, I could now, and I may, what I may end up doing is if I were to walk this over, and actually if you look right here, you can see this thread. There's a couple threads that are like completely out of whack right here on this pink one that are like, there's that big old gap right there because that moved and I didn't catch that. But I'm not too worried about it. But what I could do and what I may do, and I'm thinking about it as I speak, is maybe move this cut over this way like 1/4 of an inch and do a fresh new cut, because I actually was earlier anticipating that I was going to have a way bigger section I was going to cut out. So I'm pretty happy with only having this little tiny section that I had to cut out, because let's face it, I want to keep as much of this pattern in here. I don't want to cut it and lose a bunch of it and have this little tiny thing. So I want to maintain as much of that as I can. At least that's the plan. But like I said, I saved way more than I thought. So if I were to go ahead and recut that all the way around and move that over like 1/4 of an inch, I'd still have like more than I thought I was going to get. So I'll probably end up doing that. Probably just have to plan on using more razor blades, and just these razor blades are they dull out really fast. So now what I'm doing is just getting all this little bit of thread that's stuck onto the blank off of there. Got to be careful not to damage my winding checks. End up coming back with my razor blade and cleaning this up a little bit better. I'm sorry, with my vacuum cleaner. So yeah, that's mostly what it's going to look like. And then I'm just going to lay this same ice blue thread and cover in all of this. It should be fine. There's a little bit of damage on my aluminum anodized winding checks. Actually, that was I thought it was, but it was just glue that was stuck to it that had like a lensing effect, and it looked like exposed metal on the winding check, but it was just glue. It came right off. So yeah, I guarantee you there's not a video on YouTube of how you do this. Like I said, not glamorous, just part of the process. And it's pretty common in the middle of a build that when you're either fixing problems or just you're in different stages where it's not finished yet, where there's definitely, if you were the client and you saw it, you might be pretty concerned, going like, oh my God, that looks terrible. It's like, dude, I'm not done yet. It's kind of like when someone's installing something at your house and you're watching and you're like, oh shoot. And you're like, dude, I'm not done. There's like a ton of stuff I have to do. A lot of tradesmen are like, will you please not watch me while I'm doing this? It's really long, and the way it looks now is not the way it's going to look when it's finished. So as you can see, the blank's cleaning up. There's basically the residue of the ice blue thread, where the colors come off the ice blue thread, and it just kind of looks like silver metallic. And basically I'm just lightly scraping that off, and it's coming right off. It's just a lot, but it's just time. And anyways, that's going to get covered, so it's fine. It's going to get covered with thread. So but it's not going to show because it's going to get covered with thread. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get every little bit of that off of there, because you could wrap the thread right over it, but you really want to create the smoothest surface that you can to lay the thread down. So that's why I'm just trying to get all of that off, which is just time. It's coming right off. There's like a little bit of the last strand of thread that's trying to hang on to the blank, and it's trying to hang on underneath of the winding check where the glue was like wedged in there, where it's not very accessible. This rod is going to be so funky and cool when it's done. I'm not even the slightest bit worried about how this is going to turn out, even though right now it looks like it's under construction, which it is, because I've been here so many times that you just know how it's going to be when it's done. See how that's cleaning up a lot better? There's just a couple little bits that are this little bit of thread is just like clinging on under there. Which is not a big deal. That'll come out. The razor blade is actually going pretty far under the wind check. You see that, how it's disappearing into there? These winding checks are really tricky, and as far as figuring out the right size, because you don't always know exactly what to pinpoint exactly where on the blank your wind checks are going to go, like when you're ordering them. So they're tricky because they could be like a little bit too large of a diameter, where there's like a bigger space in between the check and the blank than you want. or where it's just a little bit too small, like you need to slide this up this direction on the blank, and it's like the blanks, or I'm sorry, you need to slide it this way where the blank's getting larger, and it like at some point it just stops because they're touching and it just won't move anymore, and you need to move it further to where it's like a little bit too small. And they're like $4 each, so like relatively speaking for what it is, a little tiny piece of aluminum anodized, they're somewhat expensive. You know, not that $4 is expensive, but you got to order 4 of them or 3 of them. And you know, if you want to order like, oh, I'm not sure if it's going to be a 18 millimeter or a 19 millimeter, but I know it's going to be one or the other. You know, or it's like, you know, you've got one up here this way, like 16, you know, 14 inches away, and then you got this one and you got this one, and this one's definitely a different size than the one up here, like 20 inches away, maybe 14 inches away from here, and maybe 21 inches away from here. And so I end up having like, gosh, I have a grip of these colored winding checks. I have so many of them in different sizes, and I buy them at Mudhole. These are the AAWC wind check. They're one of the few products out there that goes up to like a large diameter. So even if you wanted to use these on like a big heavy saltwater rod with a big large butt section, you can, you know, unless it's just larger than, you know, unless it's just larger than the diameter where it won't fit, but you know, which could be on like a 4XH big ass rod or a glass rod, it might not work. But all right, so what I'm gonna do, and I might be opening up a can of worms, but I'm willing to take the risk, is I'm going to move this over a little bit and just do a fresh cut. And that's only a couple millimeters, so I'm not losing that much more. And I'm just gonna do a little piece, and I'm just gonna go for it. I'm gonna throw that one in the trash and get a fresh razor blade. Like I said, I would buy these 100 packs because you're gonna go through a lot of them. You can save your spent razor blades. They get to where they're not quite as sharp as you want to like cut your thread and do certain things you're trying to do. But you could throw them in your toolbox, and definitely, if you ever need a razor blade for some non-rod building related application, they'll definitely come in handy. Where you've got, you know, you're cutting just some other little funky thing on a job site or something that you might need some razor blades. Because sometimes it seems silly to use it and make a few cuts, and it gets a little bit dull for your application, and you're just throwing them in the trash. All right, so now I'm coming back in, and I'm gonna just lightly score this, try to make a line. Maybe like a little learning from the last one that I did. What you might want to do, which I should have done, was start like where the overlap of the tape is right here. Start there, so that way when you hit that, you know where you started, because you can't really see the cut that you're making. So it's hard to know when you've gotten to your start point and you've gotten back around. This is wanting to go like this on me. It's wanting to come over onto the tape, and then it's wanting to drift off. That's, I mean, you definitely would have a really hard time doing this without laying down the tape as a guide. So what I'm going to do here is twofold. I'm gonna go way more and basically double, triple, quadruple confirm that I'm all the way through all the thread. Just switch sides because there's probably like a tangent spot right here where I'm cutting, and then now I'm moving it, so it's effectively almost like a new fresh razor blade. I'm gonna go several times around just to make sure I'm really getting through all of that epoxy all the way down to the blank and through every last fiber of thread. Then when I pull this off, it should just come right off and not disturb anything like it did on the last one. So you know, this thread is metallic, which means it does have a little bit of metal in it. And even though the tensile strength of one fiber with the razor blade will cut really easy, when you're laying down, you know, a bunch of fibers, here's 4 fibers of cloth, and then you've got 4 fibers of cloth, and you've got some metallic fibers. It's all bunched up where they're all intersecting. That's a pretty strong section. It's almost like a rebar inside of concrete if you really think about it. So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to really make sure I'm all the way through. I'm gonna get a new razor blade because that one is definitely, you gotta really be careful with these graphite blanks, or actually any blank for that matter, even a graphite composite or even a glass blank. You know, I mean, this is a knife. Effectively, you could cut right through the fibers of your blank. And I am cutting through the fibers of the blank a little bit by doing this. I'm trying to make sure I don't go too deep. But you could damage the blank. You could certainly compromise the integrity of the blank. I don't want to keep doing this. I want to stop and peel that off, but I'm just really trying to make sure that I'm through and down to the blank all the way around, because I don't want to have any of that same problem I just had. I think I'm there, but we're about to find out. Actually, you know what? I'm going to leave that tape down as like a, I'm going to leave that tape down as like a, what do you call it? Almost like clamping down the part that I'm, so if it does want to rip up and lift, that hopefully that tape will reinforce it and cause the side that I'm pulling off to want to come apart before my finish wants to come apart. So I'm going to actually put a little bit more tape down to do that, to serve as like reinforcement. All right, so la momenta de la verdad, the moment of truth. I'm gonna go over here on the layer of 1. Come on, come right off and don't be a bitch. Boom, came right off. All right, so that was a lot better. So I'm glad I did that. And let's see how it looks. Should look a lot better. Yeah, it looks a lot better. So there's a little bit of thread under the blank that's hanging on right here. Let me get those fibers off. Boom. That came out way better. All right, so I'm totally totally happy with that. There's a little bit more cleanup I can do over here of the threads. I think I'm just gonna go ahead and keep recording. I'm not putting a gun to anyone's head, but some people might want to watch, so you might pick up some tricks or some tips. Yeah, that's a lot better. That's a lot better. That is much better. I'm much happier with that. Don't freak out when you're building rods and doing thread work and you have little mishaps. Most of them you can recover from. Sometimes you'll cut something. You'll cut some thread, or something will break, or something will, you know, you're in the middle of a big section and something will break and like the whole thing is ruined and you have to start over, and that is frustrating. But if it never happened to you, then you would be literally the only person in rod building that never happened to, because everybody, the best guys ever, that has happened to. Because you don't even see it coming when you're inexperienced. You don't even see it coming. Even when you're experienced, sometimes you can do stuff. And I've learned to be like way more careful, because you go spend 2 hours on like a big color blend or something, and then like accidentally, when you're cutting your tag ends, accidentally cut it and basically ruin it. You get a little bit, you know, you learn from your mistakes. You get scared where you're like, oh my God, please don't mess this up. And then, you know, you'll do it and you're like, oh my God, I messed it up. So you gotta slow down and is that thread or the blank coming up? One thing I'll do when I'm like cutting off my tag ends from a color blend is, what I used to do is try to set the razor blade into that spot and push, but you could just miss by a tiny amount and just nick a fiber and it goes psh. So what I've kind of learned to do is, with these razor blades, are really thick, really sharp, is once you set it in there into the gap where you want it and you have your tag end, you can kind of like move it and kind of cut, and it'll just score that fiber, as opposed to pushing in and you might break something. So I've learned to pump the brakes and chill out and not be spazzy. Same thing you can do on a big fish. You get a little spazzy and lose a fish. We've all done that. All right, that I'm super happy with. So I'm gonna stop this. All right, I still have a little bit of time. I gotta take the dog into the vet at noon. It's 10 after 11 right now, so nothing major, just a little thing. But so what I'm gonna do is, actually I should just measure. So this one ended up being, went from like 11 millimeters to 14 millimeters. So I cut off an additional 3 millimeters, which, yeah, that sounds about right. So what I'm gonna do is mark 14 millimeters, set my tape on. More or less. And this one I'm going to pull off. Okay. So all right. So same thing on this one. I'm gonna try to not be as intentional you know, I look at the clock every time I finish stuff, and I can't believe how long this takes. It's so funny. I've done builds for friends and people, and they literally think you have like 2 or 3 hours into it. It's like, dude, it takes me like so long to do these things. I might have like, people are like, oh, it's probably 2, 3, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 hours at the most or something. It's like, dude, I literally spent 12 hours building your rods. People are like, why don't you build more rods and, you know, charge people and for profit and do all that? I'm just like, dude, it's like $10 an hour by the time you figure out how much money you're making. You do a rod for somebody for $400 and you got $200 in materials and you got $200 in margin and you got 20 hours into it. It's, you know, 15 hours. It's like, you know, it's like, it ends up being like $10 to $20 an hour, which, you know, I should not be spending my time doing that. I should be selling real estate and not working for $10 an hour. Not that $10 an hour is bad, but for me, for what I should be doing, I shouldn't be doing it. So this is my own rod though, so it's a little bit different. And I do some rods for people and stuff. And if you want a custom rod, I would probably build you one. But you have to enjoy it, you know? Like, if you're not enjoying it, and like I said earlier, there's definitely been some times where I wasn't enjoying it. If you're not gonna enjoy it, you're just gonna be like, oh my God, it's so much work. But isn't that like the old saying goes, do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life? You know, I really feel like you have to, what I've learned, I'm 51 years old, is you have to serve and you have to love people. And then you can be in that mindset that where you enjoy things. Because if you're not serving and you're not loving people, then unfortunately you got a different flavor going on with what you're doing, and it's very hard to be sustainable at anything. All right, I know for a fact that if I stop right now, that I definitely did not push hard enough to go through that, and I'm gonna have a big problem on my hands. But I did score it enough and get through it. Now I'm gonna get that tape out of my way so I can see my channel better. And then I'm gonna do what I did before, which is just keep going through this thing. Okay. Whew. My fingers are sore. You know, if you're thinking about having a custom rod built, whether it's me or somebody else, you know, depending on how big of an investment it's going to be for you and like how much liquid you have available to spend on such an endeavor, and you're kind of deciding if you should do it, I would definitely say, you know, I would definitely say that, you know, really think about it, because certain applications, you kind of want a custom rod, and some of these rods are so expensive anymore that just even the factory rods are crazy expensive. Like we were at the landing, Fisherman's Landing, a few months ago, and they were charging like $800 for a stock off the shelf rod like a Cowstar or a Seeker. Some of them were like 800 bucks, and I was completely floored. You know how crazy expensive they are, and not necessarily that much more expensive for a custom than for an off-the-shelf rod. But the whole reason why I'm saying it is because, you know, with some of these rods, like, you know, if you're getting like a custom little trout rod built, keep in mind that a little trout rod is very dainty, very fragile type of a rod, prone to breakage and damage. And you know, these don't really have a warranty. This is, even if you get a warranty on your custom rod, you know, your builder isn't gonna like go and, let's just say the manufacturer warranties the blank and the blank blade breaks. I mean, somebody still has to, you gotta still get pretty much all new components. Your reel seat can't really be saved. You might be able to save the guides, but somebody's basically got to go and kind of like completely rebuild the rod again. So you don't have the same type of a warranty situation going on a custom rod that you have on a factory rod. You know, like a Bass Pro Shops rod or a St. Croix, or some of these places where, you know, they build thousands of rods. Those companies have pretty good warranty programs where you could have a mishap. You could even do something that's totally your own fault and like send the rod out to the manufacturer. And sometimes you can even just like tell them straight up, like, dude, I messed up and broke my rod. Because sometimes rods just break and you didn't even do anything. And you're like, dude, I just barely even, like, before the rod even loaded up on the hook set, and it just broke. And you're like, all right, well, that can happen, especially if it got hit by like a sinker or something. But then there's other times where, you know, you mess up and you're like, hey, I was high sticking the fish and the rod broke. And the rod companies are so used to dealing with like people lying about everything that sometimes you're just honest with them. And they'll just be like, yeah, no problem, we're just gonna send you a rod out. Because on a factory rod, you know, there's not a lot of heavy customization and stuff that takes a lot of time. You've got people that's all they do is wrap those rods all day long. And they're really fast at the thread work. And so the amount of actual cost that goes into building those rods is pretty low. And then just from a customer service perspective, they want to take care of their customers. So, you know, you break a trout rod, you know, even if they say, hey, it's a $40 warranty fee, you know, that way they can make a little bit of money on the components, or 100 bucks or whatever it is, boom, you're getting a new rod. So, you know, if you need a real specific swim bait rod for casting a real specific type of a heavy bait and you can't really find anything available off the shelf, then that's like a good reason to buy a custom rod. You know, if money's not an issue, then it's not even a conversation worth having. You just get your custom rod and pay for it. And
what time are you leaving?
Probably in just a few minutes. Hey, buddy.
Cindy, can you come inside, please? Do you want a cookie?
Oh, that's a pretty good offer. You don't want to pass that one up. My dog. I'm gonna get his cookie. But yeah, you know, just be careful with your tackle too. That's another thing, is just being careful. Depending on, you know, you can beat your tackle up pretty good fishing in a boat. Stuff bounces around, and you know, if you've got like a Carolina rig or any kind of a rig that's got any kind of a sinker on it, and that sinker is like bam, 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 smashing into your blank, you know, it's like if you watch hockey, you see a guy will chop another guy's stick real hard, and then you'll see the players will like lean on it real good, because basically that hockey stick, when somebody slashes it, you put a weak spot in, just one little tiny weak spot in the fiberglass or the carbon fiber or whatever it is, and it'll just break, and it's already compromised and it'll break. And what you'll see in hockey is they're always like bending the crap out of their sticks, like in between shifts on the bench or when they come out, or anytime anyone chops their stick, because they've learned the hard way when you go to take a slap shot and your stick, or even just passing it barely, and your stick just comes apart in your hand. It's like the stick was fine, and then somebody chopped it and basically pretty much broke it without it coming apart completely. And then the next play, when you put any kind of a pressure on it at all, it's going to break. And that's another thing too about your graphite rods is, you know, if you have a rod for however long and you're catching fish on it and nothing's going on, and you've had the rod and everything's cool, and then just suddenly one day you make a cast and the thing just breaks on the cast, or you make a hook set, or you barely even do anything and the rod just breaks, like what happened was some damage occurred. Something happened. Somebody stepped on it. Somebody did something. It's an accident, but it happens. So if the rod's fine, it should, if you fish your rod and you're putting a heavy load on the rod and taxing that rod pretty heavily and everything's fine, you're basically, the first time you do that, you're pretty much testing that your rod's good to go. Then after that, your rod should always be good to go. If it comes apart, it sustained some kind of damage somewhere along the lines. I probably gotta head out in a minute, but I'm pretty satisfied with the way this went. I was a little bit worried about it. I did have a little bit of a oh shit moment, but yeah, I'm happy with it. Right now I'm just getting some of this additional little bit of Mylar material that's stuck to the blank. Just getting that off so I can have a smoother, cleaner surface to lay my thread down onto. Right now my razor blade is coming over and touching the thread, but I'm not worried about it because this section has flex coat on it, so that's not gonna allow it to like come apart on me really. Oops. Yeah. Cool. Totally stoked with that. So that is basically that. And then the next thing I'm going to do is come in with some ice blue thread and fill in these sections, and then I'll get some more flex coat on it. I'll probably lay, when I lay the thread in there, I'll probably lay a big thick section of flex coat like right over it and try to flush it in, and then use the rest of the flex coat and not put any over on here. And then I'll use the rest of that to like get some more coats on the rest of the rod guides, which only have like, I think 1 coat of flex coat on them right now, because I need like 4 more coats. And then once this is filled in and bringing this level up more even, because this is way huge transition and I don't want it to show. So once I get that flex coat in there to kind of even out that transition, then I'll come back with another fresh coat on top of that on the whole thing to kind of, that'll level it out even more. And then I'll probably end up with a total of like 3 or 4 coats on this. It'll be a little bit bumpy because of all the way the threads are really bumpy in some sections where you've got, you know, 4 layers of thread. Like right here you have 1, 2, 3. Right here you have 1, 2, 3, 4 all coming together. Actually right here you have 5. So it's 5 things coming together right here. So you've got 5 surfaces of thread, and then right here on the blue you only have the 1. So it's bulky. But I'll be able to even that out. I gotta run right now to take the dog, so I'm gonna stop and come back and finish cleaning this up a little bit more later. But yeah, I'm super happy with the way that worked out. So this is gonna look totally sweet when I finish it. All right, thanks for watching.